Scott, it's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Joe, I love your show, and I'm really thankful that you gave me the invite, and I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. I'm excited. So let's begin our journey into your life and world by asking you this. We're in a new year and we just survived a pandemic, which is a pretty big deal. And it really was kind of a seismic thing for all of us to live through. How many waves were created during that time period that you still feel today in what you're doing?
Well, I think the big one for most employers, especially large employers, was the wake-up call that we had that you can actually work from anywhere and that you don't have to be in the office. And we're seeing now kind of the oscillation. There was the sort of crest previous to COVID was you have to be in the office and I have to see you working and all of those things. And then COVID hit and nobody could be there. And we started to realize, wow, I guess you don't really have to be here. You can do other things. And now we're seeing the tug of war between I want you back, but I I know that you don't have to be there. And I think we're watching that play out with a lot of different organizations right now. And I think the one thing that goes unspoken in that whole thing is that what needs to change, like the big deal is not where are you, it's how we're managing you. And that hasn't evolved. That didn't move. The location was the issue with COVID, but the management paradigm wasn't. And it needs to be, because I don't think it truly matters where you are if the management paradigm is right for managing you remotely. And we can talk more about that if you want to talk.
Yeah, for sure. So let's get into the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. It's one thing to see on paper what you do, but if I was to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, third graders, it's career day, and one of the kids in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you
Yeah.
answer them?
Well, so okay, I let me do 2 seconds on where I came from because it contextualizes where I'm at.
Sure.
I've been in the profession of HR for 25 years, with
Okay.
about 20 of those in a C-level role. And I've been in organizations as large as 15,000 and down to 250. And then I gave all of that up. I had this psychotic break, I think, one day, based on the fact that I really thought that I could build better software than what I was buying, and that I cared a lot about this concept of employee fit and how people fit into organizations, and equally important, how those organizations fit the people.
Yeah.
And so I left and I became a founder. And I went from, 45 plus ish weeks that were manageable with holidays and time off and pay and all of that. And all of a sudden, I'm in this founder world where it's 70 plus hours and it is absolutely chaotic because you wear every single hat. And you know what? I don't think I would trade it. It's been an amazing journey. I think probably the hardest part of my career, but the best part of my career. So if I was going to tell a bunch of third graders what I did, it is every job that you can imagine in an organization. I do that on almost a daily basis. I am the sole guy responsible for making a company go right now, both in terms of the ideas and the execution. I lead a small team and we build software that changes the way that people approach business.
What did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
Mm, I don't know. Does anybody really know? I mean, I think you pick careers like astronaut, and
Yeah.
and, and I
Right.
did want to be an astronaut,
Yeah.
and doctor and those kinds of things. And then you realize, man, science is hard.
Yes.
Science is really, really hard. But I picked a career. So I mean, here's what I wouldn't have been able to predict. I started my career. I was a police officer with the Los Angeles Police Department,
Okay.
and I think it's kind of weird that I started there and I wound up in HR. Although I learned a really important lesson, which is that four people can stand on four corners of the same intersection and they can watch the exact same accident happen and yet have four very different perspectives about what they actually saw.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important lesson that I took out of that, because that's how organizations work too. Perspective is everything, and point of view it matters a lot, and it matters a lot for trust, which is the principal currency in an organization. So I don't remember, to be honest with you, what I wanted to be in third grade.
Yeah.
I knew I wanted it to be something creative,
Okay.
but I don't think I remember much beyond that.
So let me ask you this. Take me back to where you were born and raised. What were these foundational elements that made you hum at a higher rate? You're obviously very driven. You're very curious. And what were those seeds that were planted into you that have eventually evolved into where you've landed today in your career?
I mean, failure is a good teacher. And I think I have, regrettably, I've had, I mean, I don't know if I can say that. Sorry, I got to correct myself. Like I said, regrettably, I've had a lot of failure, but I don't think it is regrettable. I think that failure, if you have the right mental attitude going into it, that failure teaches you a lot. And the first question is, if you have a failure, well, why did I fail? What happened? And the other thing that I think makes me curious is when I recognize that there's a difference between bad effort and bad result.
Yeah.
Like you can put in a really good effort, you can do a really, really good job, you can still get a bad result. And and that in to a certain extent is okay if you did the right things, but that forces you to question your own conduct. Like, did I really give my, everything I had?
Yeah.
Did I, you know, did I do what I really needed to do? I'll tell you another thing was formative in my life was for a while I was a pretty serious marathoner. Now I say serious in the sense that I wasn't going to win, I'm not going to win the marathon with the time that I was running. But overall from my first marathon, and I think I've run 10 or 11, from the first one that I ran to the last one that I ran, I think I dropped a total of 90 minutes, which, over the course of 26 miles is a lot. But here's what marathon taught me is that um, a lot of the pain that we experience is inside of our own heads
Hmm.
and that you can move past it. And what you have to do is recognize it for what it is and want to get past it, and then just make up your mind that you're going to do it,
Yeah.
and not take any excuses. And your body is going to in that race, your body is going to give you every possible excuse that you can. But I look at that and I think, there's a paradigm, or at least there was for me. There's a paradigm in business. There's a paradigm in life, right? I'm getting the signals that say don't do it, and I'm not gonna allow that to interfere.
I was a cross country runner in high school. I was small. I was like 4'11". I always wanted to play the other sports, but I just got into running early on and it became, but you're totally right. Like I never really honed in and thought about it in that way because you do have to almost trick your brain. Because once you get into the science of like pain receptors and how the brain sends signals and how your body, it's all like a big highway going up and down. It's like there is a way that you can tell yourself things that you can convince yourself of something when you're doing that that's totally different from reality.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that we do that both positively and negatively. You can convince yourself that a bunch of negative things are going to happen, and they usually will. You can
Yeah.
convince yourself that a bunch of positive things are going to happen, and they usually do too.
Yeah.
And as a founder, like I mean, when I say chaos, it is total chaos, and it's a total roller coaster.
Yeah.
And nobody could have prepared me for kind of what every day's, rise and fall of emotions would be. And I think those lessons that I learned earlier about, just your mental point of view matter. I'll tell you one more quick story, Joe, about um, that has a running sort of connection to it. When I was a sort of, well, a cadet, I guess they don't really call them that in the Los Angeles Police Department. Um, like running is a big thing in that department. And the area that I trained in was the old police academy in Los Angeles, and it's in a really, really hilly area of LA. And so when you go out to run, you're running these really, really steep hills. And what's called falling out of a run. You run as a group and you run in a formation. And if you fall out, that means you are unable to keep up with the group.
Yeah.
That's a really bad thing.
Yeah.
It's like that there's a social sort of stigma to it. There's a you didn't have the mental sort of toughness to be in there. And we were out on a PT run one night, and it was really, really foggy. And we were running up this really long hill. And man, it was hard. And I was a squad leader, so I'm at the front of this formation, and I'm looking up the hill, and I can't see anything because of the fog. And we're just running. And I'm looking for the end of it, and you can't see it. And I'm just running, and I'm hurting, and I'm tired, and I start to fall out. And as I fell back, that hill crested. And the lesson that I took out of that I remember, and this is 30 years ago, right? But the lesson that I took out of it is you don't know when that hill is going to crest.
Yeah.
And if I had just had the mental toughness to stay in it just a little bit longer, past what I could see, the hill would have crested. I would have been fine. We would have run downhill, and it wouldn't. And nobody looked down on me in that moment. Or at least I don't think they did. But I looked down on me, and
Yeah.
I did it because I couldn't. I didn't. I wasn't getting the feedback that I needed, and I mentally quit because of it. And that's been a lesson that I've held on to for 30 years.
Yeah, that's amazing. So let me ask you this: who's been a hero? Who's been kind of a an inspiration for you in your life and your work?
Well, I spent a lot of time thinking about leadership. And not to I'm not intentionally injecting politics into it, but I'm going to use a political figure because I think it's an amazing example of what a leader really does. And the example is John McCain. And when he was running against President Obama, he held a town hall. And in this town hall, there were a bunch of people, and everybody was emotional, and to a lesser degree than a lot of people are emotional today. But there was still a lot of emotion in the room. And a woman had stood up, and she had taken the microphone, and she was spouting off that President Obama wasn't a citizen of the United States, and he's a Muslim, and all things that we should not like. And Senator McCain looked at her, and he really gently puts his hand on her shoulder, and he takes the microphone, and he just says no. And she looks at him, and the look on her face is amazing. She says no, and he says no, and she sat down. And the reason I think that's such an important lesson is that so often we capitalize on where the emotion is, but the
Yep.
real leadership, what a true leader does is bring people to the truth,
Yep.
to recognize a situation and to push them to something that is better than they are currently. And you can see it in that interaction. And
Yep.
he could have whipped the crowd up. And
Totally.
he also, that whole thing could have gone sideways for him.
Uh-huh.
And that's the danger of leading. And so when I think of what a real leader does, man, the first thing you got to do is be brave.
Yeah.
And the second thing you got to do is really focus on why are you there?
Yeah.
Are you there to court supporters, or are you there to lead people to something better? And
Yeah.
you could see it in what he did. And for that, he is a hero. I mean, he is for so many reasons, but for
Yeah.
that one.
I love that clip, and it is interesting because I think about leadership. When I was a kid, when Christy McAuliffe was going up in that space shuttle in '86, I was in middle school. I would have seen her teach. We were all ecstatic, and just how magnanimous that was in our existence. And and again, no politics are getting interjected other than the names and what we're talking about. But I remember Ronald Reagan did his speech that night, and as a kid, it was such a comforting speech. And I remember that was kind of the JFK standard of having a leader really comfort everybody in this time of absolute disarray. And
Yeah.
it was like what McCain did. I mean, I've seen that clip over and over, and it always gets me because it's like he totally could have gone the other way. He could have totally fed in because we're used to that now. We thought that was hardcore. We never knew what was going to happen in 2024 or 5.
But you know what? The examples, like, we don't get televised, but we have those on a regular basis.
Hmm.
It's just that not everybody gets to know about them the way we got to know about that one because we could see it. It was a clip that got circulated, right? But we have those opportunities,
Yeah.
and do we take them is the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. In the realm of being an entrepreneur and being a leader, if you could meet one leader alive today, one person that exemplifies what you think is a good business mind, just a good person top down, who would you love to see, meet, or hang out with?
Oh man, that's a hard question. Who would I want to hang out with as a business leader? And we're talking people that are this is alive, not
Well, it could be ghosts. We can open it up. We can open the door.
just. I mean, I think there are a lot of people that I would like to ask a lot of hard questions to.
Yeah,
I mean, I go back to a political figure, and again, not intentionally being political, but President Obama I thought, was an amazing um, leader for what he led through. He did not have a group of people that wanted to rally around him, not to just disagree about policy. They wanted to disagree about him,
yeah,
and you never heard it from him.
yep.
And I think my lead question would be, how do you manage that? How do you self-manage around all of the negative stuff? Because I think that's what sidetracks a lot of leaders in in their own leadership is the emotion gets in the way sometimes. And he was a guy that you never really saw that from him. You just saw that constant stream of like, here's the objective. This is what we're going after.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to join you on that visit. I would love to meet Obama. It's just the things that he was doing and how cool he is. So let me ask you this. How do you find that balance in your life of being a high performing professional? You're in charge of a group, but you also have to evolve as a human being yourself. What is it that motivates you every day to wake up, to do the work in your life and your business life at the best possible level?
I believe in what we're doing. I believe in the mission of Propulsion AI and what we're trying to achieve. You know, I've been after 25 years, I went to work in an organization where I didn't fit. And ultimately, I mean, the short version of that story is at the end of my first year there, I went to my boss and I said, this is not working out. Like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not interested, the mental and physical toll, et cetera. And he said, well, that's great because it's not working out for me either. And I was like, all right, so let's go.
Yeah,
But that lack of fit matters. And the reality, we know it from a group of 20,000 new hires that Forbes followed, and of that 20,000, 46% of them failed in their first 18 months.
yeah,
And globally, the price of lack of fit and of low engagement is about $1.1 trillion dollars.
yeah.
But that's the costs that are easy to calculate. There's a human factor to that too. And I mean, I can tell you, my own experience, like after 25 years and in a career where I was helping other people find the fit, when I got myself into a situation where I didn't fit, I thought, like, am I a failure? Like, am I not good at my job? And I don't think any of those things were true. But it is true that, most of us have been in organizations where you don't have to pick your words. It just feels natural. The way that you communicate is natural for the organization. When you get criticism in that organization, like where you fit, like it doesn't feel like criticism.
Yeah,
It just feels like, hey, try these other things, right? Those are hallmarks of fit. And I don't mean fit in, I mean fit.
yeah.
And I believe in that. And so at Propulsion AI, we are focused on helping organizations find that fit with their employees, and equally important, helping employees find that fit with organizations. And I believe in that. And
Yeah.
that's what gets me up every day.
So, of everything that you've done and evolved into at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Mm. I think the moment I'm in right now,
Yeah,
it took a lot to make the leap. It takes a lot every day to keep focused. It takes a lot when you don't have, it's really easy when you're inside an organization, like it's frequently somebody else's problem.
yeah,
And you look around, and I think the really funny thing that I've discovered is you look around and you go like, oh, the marketing people, they're not that good. And then you get out and you're doing marketing, and you're like, oh my God, marketing's hard. And, but I would say the same thing about sales, and I'd say the same thing about product, and I'd say the same thing about engineering, and like all of those things. Like, they're really hard.
yeah,
And so I think I'm most proud of what I'm doing right now. One, because I think we've really gotten something. We launched product. If you go to www.getpropulsion.ai, you can see what we built. You can try it for free.
yeah,
But we launched product in November.
yeah,
We've gained pretty significant traction so far. And so I know people resonate with it.
yeah.
Even large organizations, like we had a senior VP from Albertsons get on the profile and or on the platform and go through and scope out a role and design a role and download the documents, and we're super happy about that. So
So, as the skipper of the ship, everyone has a perception of you, including family, friends, everyone that knows you in your life, but you run the show. What's
yeah.
your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Well, it's a really small crew right now for us, thank God. And so I don't know. I mean, I'm a guy that tries to show up every day and do the right thing. I'm a person that cares about being open and transparent and honest. I'm willing to admit mistakes, or at least I think I'm willing to admit mistakes. I'm also, super committed to kind of the way that I see the business playing out. I'm not really, I don't want to say I'm unbending, but if there are facts that suggest we should be doing something different, I want facts. If we're dealing with opinions, we're going to go with mine,
Yeah.
you know? So
So getpropulsion.ai is the best place for people to go to experience. But if they want to reach out to you, they want to learn more, any of the good business in your world, where's the best place to go?
LinkedIn for sure. And I love connecting. And I'll tell you another lesson that I've really learned. And I don't think just immediately recently, but certainly more in the more recent term, just the goodness of people and the value of network. And, there are so many amazing people that I've met. Like my first thought when I meet somebody now is like, what am I going to be able to do for you? How can I help you do something? And before it was just the opposite. It's what can you do for me?
Sure.
And that lesson was taught to me by the amazing people that I've met in this journey with Propulsion AI, who have been so incredibly helpful and for like zero reason. Like they owe me nothing. And here they are trying to do something amazing for the company and for me. And you can't help but want to pay that, that
Yeah.
back. So,
I
so
see that.
LinkedIn, long answer,
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
No, I dig it. And I see that because in my other incarnation in jazz, that's what jazz musicians do. The higher up the food chain you go, the elders, they're so good, man. They're keeping that torch alive. They're helping the young cats. They're doing all these things. And there's no reason. That's just what they do. It's woven into their DNA. And I think when you get into that mindset, you pass it on. And that just creates this positive tsunami of change and good that we all want in the world because there's enough that needs to be fixed.
For sure.
you know? So, Scott, this has been wonderful. Thank you, sir. Thank you for your story. Thank you for your time. I'm going to put everything in the show notes, urge everybody to go your way. Keep doing the wonderful work, man.
Awesome. Joe, thank you again for having me on the show. I love listening
Thank
and
you.
I'm honored that you picked me. And so I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely.